You walk in, ready to seize the opportunity, only to have something unexpected happen, something that could ruin everything. This is exactly what happened to our protagonist, a young woman named Emily, and you won't believe how she turned the situation into her favor. The dress she had so carefully chosen for the event tore in the middle of the job fair, right when she was about to approach one of the top recruiters in the industry. In that instant, it seemed like her chance was over, her professional dreams shattered. But in a twist that no one could have predicted, Emily walked out of that job fair with not one, but multiple job offers from some of the most sought-after companies in the country. How did she manage to turn a wardrobe malfunction into a winning moment? Stick with me, because I promise you'll be just as shocked and inspired by the outcome as she was. In this video, we're going to unpack the details of Emily's incredible journey and show you what she did to transform her disaster into a golden opportunity. You'll see how she used confidence, quick thinking, and something deeper, something that might just change the way you approach life and opportunities, so don't go anywhere, because what she did next could change everything you thought you knew about career success. Okay, let me take you to that moment. Picture Emily standing in front of a booth, scanning the recruiter's eyes as she confidently introduced herself. She had prepared for this moment for months. She looked polished, smart, and professional, just as she had planned. But then, it happened. As she took one step forward, there was a sudden, loud rip from the back of her dress. It was like a nightmare in slow motion, the kind of thing you'd expect to see in a movie, but never in real life. Her heart sank as she reached back, feeling the fabric tear as if her professional dreams were also unraveling in that single moment. She looked around, desperately trying to assess the situation. Was it too late to run back to her car and change? Could she somehow salvage the look? But she realized quickly there was no time. People were walking around, heads turning, and the recruiter, a woman in her 40s who had been smiling just moments before, was now staring at her with a mixture of curiosity and doubt. In that moment, it felt like everything was lost. Emily's mind was racing. Was this the end of her chances at landing a job in her dream industry? Should she just leave and call it a day? It's a situation we've all feared, isn't it? You work so hard to prepare, to put your best foot forward, and then one small, unexpected thing happens, and suddenly, you're no longer in control. But here's where things get really interesting. Rather than running away, rather than hiding from the situation, Emily did something unexpected. She took a deep breath, smiled, and didn't just apologize, she made it part of her story. In front of that recruiter, in front of all the other people walking around, she owned the moment. And believe me, the ripple effect of that decision would soon shock everyone. Now, I know what you're thinking. Could something as simple as an outfit malfunction really lead to multiple job offers? How could this possibly turn into a success story? Stick with me, and I'll explain how Emily managed to turn that moment into an opportunity. It all comes down to one critical decision: the ability to remain calm, self-assured, and resourceful in the face of an obstacle. Emily could have let embarrassment take over, but instead, she decided to take control of the situation in a way that made her unforgettable. She turned her vulnerability into authenticity, which made her stand out from the rest. You see, what many people don't realize is that career success isn't just about having the perfect resume, or the ideal look, or the best qualifications. It's about how you handle those unexpected challenges, the things that you didn't plan for but are inevitable in life. It's the ability to adapt, to bounce back, and to continue moving forward even when things seem like they've gone terribly wrong. The real question here is, how many of us could have done what Emily did in that moment? How many of us would have crumbled in the face of an unexpected mishap, or even worse, let it define us? Before I go any further, let me tell you exactly what you're going to get out of this video. You're going to learn how Emily not only handled that embarrassing moment with grace, but how her reaction earned her the respect and admiration of the recruiters she interacted with. I'm going to break down the key strategies she used to turn a potential disaster into one of the most successful outcomes of her life. These are strategies you can apply to your own career journey, no matter what industry you're in or where you are in your job search. You'll understand the mental and emotional tactics she employed to stay focused, resilient, and professional, even when everything around her seemed to be falling apart. And most importantly, you'll discover why it wasn't just the clothes that made the difference, it was her mindset and ability to stay calm under pressure. You're probably wondering, how does all of this relate to me? Well, whether you're actively looking for a job, planning a career move, or simply trying to navigate the ups and downs of life, there are powerful lessons here that can help you thrive. We all face moments of vulnerability. We all encounter challenges and setbacks. But what separates those who succeed from those who don't is the ability to handle those challenges with grace, poise, and an unwavering belief in your own value. And that's exactly what Emily did in that moment when her dress tore at the job fair. But here's the twist, there's more to the story. Emily wasn't the only one at the job fair who was dealing with challenges, but she was the only one who responded in the way she did. As we dig deeper into her journey, you'll see how her story isn't just about a job fair incident, it's about something much bigger, something we all struggle with at some point in our lives, overcoming fear, embracing vulnerability, and believing in yourself when the world might seem to doubt you. But hold on. Before we dive into how Emily turned this incident into job offers, I have to share a shocking revelation with you. The recruiter who was initially put off by the wardrobe malfunction? Well, her reaction wasn't what Emily expected. In fact, it was something completely different, something that will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about professional networking. Are you ready for that? Trust me, you won't want to miss it. Stay with me to find out exactly how Emily's disaster became the key to her future. The twists and turns ahead will have you rethinking everything about first impressions, professional growth, and how to make your own luck. Keep watching to find out how Emily not only survived the job fair but absolutely thrived. This isn't just another story of success, it's a lesson in how to turn your biggest fears into your greatest strengths. You'll want to stick around for every moment, because this one will leave you inspired and ready to tackle your own career challenges head-on. But the answer to how Emily turned the situation around, that's coming up next. Keep watching now. Before we go any further, let's take a step back and look at the bigger picture. Who is Emily? What's her story, and how did she find herself in that pivotal moment at the job fair, with a torn dress and a career on the line? To understand the full depth of what happened, we need to rewind just a little bit, to give you a sense of how she got here. Emily was no stranger to the world of job hunting. She had graduated a year earlier with a degree in marketing, from a solid school in the heart of New York City. On paper, her resume was everything recruiters were looking for: a prestigious degree, internship experience, and a strong network of connections. But the truth was, Emily had struggled to land her first full-time job. It wasn't for lack of trying. She'd sent out dozens of applications, sat through countless interviews, and yet, nothing seemed to stick. It was like she was stuck in this weird limbo, always close but never quite close enough. She'd heard the stories about people who landed jobs right out of college, about those who had it all figured out and just knew the right people. Emily didn't have that. She didn't have family connections in high places or the sort of insider knowledge that so many people seem to take for granted. Instead, she relied on her own hard work, grit, and determination. But with each passing week, the pressure mounted. She was running out of money, living in a cramped apartment with 2 roommates, and her social life had all but disappeared as she poured herself into her job search. The constant rejection emails were starting to take a toll on her confidence. She'd seen friends land jobs that they'd seemed so perfectly suited for, while she was left waiting by the phone, wondering if maybe her dream job was just out of reach. Still, Emily pushed forward. She knew that it would take perseverance to break through, and she wasn't about to give up now. It was about a month before the job fair when Emily got a call from a recruiter at one of the big marketing firms she had applied to. The recruiter, a woman named Sarah, had asked if Emily was available to attend their upcoming job fair event, where top companies in the city would be looking to fill positions. The timing was perfect. Emily had already been preparing for the opportunity. She knew this could be the break she'd been waiting for. But here's where things start to get interesting. Emily wasn't the only one eyeing this opportunity. A few days before the job fair, she ran into one of her former classmates, Kate, at a local coffee shop. Kate had always been a bit of a wild card, someone who never seemed to take things too seriously. She had a knack for networking and, honestly, had that it factor that seemed to get her noticed everywhere she went. Emily couldn't help but feel a pang of envy as Kate chatted confidently about her own job prospects, dropping names of people she had met at industry events, people who could help her get her foot in the door. Emily had always admired Kate's charisma, but at the same time, it made her feel like she was missing something. She wasn't sure if it was luck, charm, or just the right connections, but there was something about Kate's confidence that rubbed off on people. She made it look easy. As the day of the job fair approached, Emily tried to ignore the nagging feeling in the back of her mind, the one that told her she wasn't enough. She poured herself into her preparation, rehearsing her pitch, making sure her portfolio was flawless, and choosing the perfect outfit, nothing too flashy, but professional enough to convey that she was serious about her career. She spent hours picking out the dress, a sleek black number that she thought would make her look polished and confident. In hindsight, it's almost as though that dress was a metaphor for how she felt about her career at that point, carefully constructed, but still fragile. The day of the job fair arrived, and Emily stepped out of her apartment with that same nervous excitement that she had felt every time she'd prepped for an interview in the past. It was a bright, crisp morning, and the city was buzzing with its usual energy. As she walked into the event, her heart began to race. She spotted the booths of major companies, recruiters moving around with business cards in hand, and candidates like her, all vying for the same opportunities. But as soon as Emily stepped inside, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. It wasn't just the competition, it was something deeper, something that had been building in the weeks leading up to this moment. For the first time, she felt as though the weight of her past rejections was going to make this moment harder than it needed to be. Was she really ready for this? Was she prepared to sell herself to people who had the power to change her future? Or was she about to make another mistake? That feeling of doubt was creeping up, and when she saw Kate across the room, talking animatedly with a recruiter from a prestigious agency, it felt like the universe was testing her resolve. For a brief second, she considered walking out of the event, retreating to the safety of her apartment where she didn't have to face the uncertainty of the moment. But then she remembered why she was there, why she had come so far. Emily took a deep breath and moved toward the first booth, where the recruiter was waiting. And then, just as she was about to introduce herself, it happened, the tear in her dress. Now, the real question on everyone's mind, was this just a simple wardrobe malfunction, or was there more at play here than met the eye? Could someone like Kate, with her connections and ability to charm her way into any conversation, have had something to do with this? Was there any chance that the universe was sending Emily a message, or was she just dealing with bad luck? There was an undercurrent of competition between the candidates, but what if the job fair wasn't just about the perfect resume or the best first impression? What if it was about something else? Something more strategic? As Emily stood there, trying to maintain her composure, she couldn't shake the feeling that the job fair was becoming a much bigger game than she had anticipated. There were other players, other forces at work behind the scenes. And what's more, not everyone in that room had the same intentions. Some people were there to succeed no matter the cost. But who were they, and what were they really after? Stay with me, because we're about to dive even deeper into Emily's story. Things are about to take a turn, and the twists you didn't see coming will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about this job fair. Was it just a coincidence that her dress tore at that exact moment, or was someone else involved in this? And what role does Kate play in all of this? As Emily moves forward, she realizes that this job fair is more than just a place to find a job, it's a battleground where the stakes are higher than she ever imagined. The answers are coming, and you won't want to miss what happens next. Keep watching to find out how this story unfolds, and what's really behind the mystery of the job fair. As the job fair continued, Emily's heart was still racing from the embarrassment of her dress tearing at the worst possible moment. But in the back of her mind, something kept nagging at her, the feeling that something bigger was happening here, something she wasn't seeing. It was as though the job fair wasn't just a chance to secure a position, but a web of hidden motives and quiet schemes unfolding beneath the surface. She wasn't sure why, but Emily felt like she was being watched. It wasn't just the other candidates, trying to make their mark, but something or someone lurking just outside her line of sight. The dress tear. Maybe it wasn't a mere accident after all. The more she tried to focus on the task at hand, the more she realized she wasn't just battling for a job offer anymore. She was in the middle of something that seemed bigger, and far more sinister, than she had originally thought. And then, just as she was trying to shake off the strange feeling of being watched, the unthinkable happened. After speaking with a recruiter from a large digital marketing agency, Emily was handed a pamphlet with more information about a potential position. It was just a simple piece of paper, but as she reached for it, something strange occurred. The recruiter, the one who had seemed so friendly and eager to chat, suddenly pulled back the pamphlet with an almost imperceptible frown. Her eyes darted quickly to her phone, and for a brief moment, Emily could swear she saw the recruiter's face tense up, as though she was hiding something. It was odd, unsettling even. Before Emily could ask if everything was okay, the recruiter quickly handed the pamphlet back to her with a forced smile, offering a generic response that everything was just fine, but something didn't feel right. Emily tucked the pamphlet into her bag, but the moment left her feeling uneasy. Later that night, as she sat alone in her apartment, she pulled the pamphlet out of her bag, determined to analyze it. But when she tried to look at it again, the contact details, everything, was completely wiped clean. The text had vanished. No phone numbers. No website information. It was like someone had erased the entire thing, leaving Emily with nothing but a blank page. She stared at it, confused. Was it a printing error? Or was someone deliberately trying to sabotage her chances? This was just the beginning of the bizarre events. The next morning, when Emily arrived at the fair, she couldn't shake the feeling that the recruiters she spoke with the previous day were acting strangely, almost distant, like they were avoiding eye contact or cutting their conversations short. It wasn't just the recruiter from the digital marketing agency either. It was as if a quiet shift had taken place overnight. No one was giving her the time of day, and no one was offering any new insights into the roles she'd been hoping to land. She tried to focus on the next booth, but something felt off. She felt like a puzzle piece trying to fit into a shape that just didn't align. Her attempts to follow up on potential opportunities fell flat. Worse, some of the recruiters seemed to be avoiding her on purpose. It was like they knew something she didn't. And then, a few days later, when Emily decided to take matters into her own hands and investigate further, she ran into something even more unsettling. She had spent the entire morning reaching out to every contact she had from the job fair, but every call, every email, went unanswered. Then, as she scrolled through her phone, she noticed something strange. An unknown number had called her late last night, but when she tried to return the call, it went straight to voicemail. The voicemail was brief, but its message was chilling. Stop digging. You don't know what you're getting into. Emily's first instinct was to brush it off as a prank. But as she listened to the voicemail again, she realized something wasn't adding up. The voice on the recording wasn't someone she recognized, but there was a familiarity to it, an unsettling sense that whoever it was knew far too much about her situation. They knew about the job fair. They knew she was looking for answers. And that sent a cold shiver down her spine. Who would want to silence her investigation? Was there something hidden within the fair, some hidden conspiracy behind the recruiter's behavior? Emily decided to press on, determined to uncover the truth, but the road ahead became murkier by the day. It wasn't just the recruiters who were acting strange. Her former classmate, Kate, the one she had run into at the coffee shop before the fair, suddenly started acting distant, too. Emily had tried to reach out to her, thinking maybe Kate had some insight into the job fair or had heard something in passing. But whenever they talked, Kate's responses seemed forced, her answers vague. Emily couldn't shake the suspicion that something about Kate was off. Was she hiding something? Was she involved in some way? And then, the most unexpected thing happened. Emily ran into a man she hadn't seen in years, someone from her past who she thought had disappeared from her life forever. His name was James, and he was once a close friend until everything had gone sideways. Emily had been naive back then, believing that James, a charming but mysterious guy, had her best interests at heart. But it turned out that he had played a part in a series of backdoor dealings that had left Emily reeling. He'd betrayed her trust in ways she had never fully understood, and when it all blew up, James had vanished without a trace. Emily had spent months recovering from the fallout, rebuilding her life, and trying to forget the betrayal. But now, here he was, standing right in front of her, looking as though he'd never left. The encounter left her feeling conflicted. Was this a coincidence? Or was James somehow involved in the strange events that had been unfolding since the job fair? The more Emily tried to piece everything together, the more fragmented the picture became. She knew James had connections, but were they the kind of connections that could be behind the strange happenings? Could he be working with someone at the job fair? Was he somehow trying to manipulate her once again? Or was he just another player in a much larger game? Now, with more questions than answers, Emily found herself at a crossroads. The more she dug into the mystery, the more obstacles seemed to appear, each one more bizarre than the last. The missing pamphlet. The strange voicemail. Kate's sudden withdrawal. James's unexpected reappearance. Everything was connected in some way, but Emily wasn't sure how. As she walked through the crowded streets of New York City, trying to piece everything together, she realized one thing for sure: she was in deeper than she had ever imagined. Someone, or something, didn't want her to uncover the truth. And just as she thought she was getting closer to the answers, she received a cryptic message that made her stop in her tracks. It was from an unknown number, and it simply said, "If you continue, you'll regret it." The message was chilling enough to make her hesitate for a moment, but her gut told her she couldn't stop now, not when she was so close. The stakes had never been higher, and the truth seemed just out of reach. The question now wasn't just what happened at the job fair, it was who was pulling the strings behind the scenes, and why. With every step she took, the mystery grew, and the risks became greater. Emily was on the verge of something big, but she wasn't sure if she was ready for the truth, or if the truth would destroy everything she thought she knew. Would she ever uncover what was really going on at that job fair? Or would the web of lies and deception catch up with her before she could finish her investigation? Keep watching, because the next part of this story is about to reveal secrets that no one saw coming. And trust me, you won't want to miss the shocking twists ahead. As Emily stood there, holding her phone with the cryptic message staring back at her, she couldn't help but feel that the walls were closing in. It wasn't just the threats that had been made to her, it was everything that had led up to this point, everything that was still unanswered. But just when she thought she was getting closer to a breakthrough, the entire story took an unexpected turn. That night, while Emily was trying to piece together the cryptic puzzle in her apartment, her phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't an anonymous message. It was from someone she hadn't heard from in months, her older brother, Aaron. They hadn't been in touch lately, mostly because their relationship had become strained over the years. Aaron had moved away for work after college, and their connection had grown distant. But Emily never imagined that he would be dragged into something like this, especially not now. The message was brief, and at first, she thought it might be a coincidence. It simply read, "You're in over your head. Stop looking." Emily's heart skipped a beat. Was this just another warning? Was someone trying to silence her by going after her family? But it didn't make sense. Aaron had no involvement in her job search or anything related to the job fair. Yet the message was eerily similar to the one she had received just days before. The chill that ran through her veins told her this wasn't some random coincidence. Her brother's message was more than just a warning, it was a signal that the situation had escalated, and not just for Emily. Someone was using the people closest to her to get their point across. It felt like her entire world was being turned upside down. With that new revelation, Emily couldn't just focus on herself anymore. She had to find out what was going on, not only because of the strange occurrences at the job fair but because her family was now somehow involved. The deeper she dug, the more complex the story became. The tension in the air grew thicker. She couldn't even trust the people closest to her, the ones who had always been there for her, to stay safe. What if Aaron was somehow tangled in this web too? He'd always been protective of her growing up, but could he have been hiding something from her all along? Emily tried to call him, but he didn't pick up, and when she tried to send a follow-up text, the response came back in minutes, "I don't know what you're talking about. Please stop asking." This only added to the unease that gnawed at her stomach. Emily knew she couldn't drop this now, even though the risks were higher than ever. With her brother now possibly threatened by the same forces that had targeted her, she was more determined than ever to get to the truth. But just as she was about to take the next step, things started to spiral further out of control. The very next morning, she received a strange package at her doorstep. No return address. No markings. Just a small, unassuming box, taped shut with a piece of plain brown tape. Her pulse quickened as she stared at it. What now? She carefully opened the package, feeling a sense of dread building inside her. Inside was a single photograph, one she didn't recognize. It was a picture of her at the job fair, taken from a distance. It had been taken during the exact moment when her dress had torn. But what was even more unsettling was that in the corner of the photograph, there was a shadowy figure, someone she hadn't noticed at the time, but who seemed to be watching her. The image was grainy and unclear, but the figure's posture was unmistakable. Whoever it was, they had been tracking her every move, even before her dress tore. This wasn't just some random event. Emily's stomach twisted into knots. Someone had been planning this, orchestrating it from the beginning. But who? And why? What did they want from her? The package contained nothing else but that one disturbing image and a small, handwritten note: "You should have stayed away." The message was chilling, and as Emily sat back in her chair, trying to process it all, a new layer of doubt began to cloud her judgment. What if everything she had believed about the job fair, about the recruiters, the mysterious disappearance of the pamphlet, Kate's sudden coldness, was just the tip of the iceberg? What if there was something far bigger at play here, something that went beyond job opportunities and the promises of career success? It was clear that someone had a much larger agenda, and Emily was stuck right in the middle of it. But who could she trust? Who could she turn to for answers when everyone seemed to be hiding something? Her thoughts were interrupted by a knock on the door. When she opened it, there was no one there. Just a small envelope, placed carefully on the doorstep. Inside, there was yet another message, but this time it was written on official-looking letterhead. It was from the same digital marketing agency that she had spoken to at the job fair, the one where the recruiter had acted so strangely. But the contents of the letter were shocking. It was an offer letter. A job offer. The position she had been pursuing was now hers, a golden opportunity she had been desperately hoping for. But there was something odd about the timing. Why was she being offered this job now, when just days ago, the company seemed completely uninterested in her? Was this a coincidence, or was there something else behind it? Was the offer real, or was it another part of the elaborate game being played with her? Emily sat frozen, staring at the letter. Was it a trap? Was someone trying to lure her in with the promise of success, only to pull the rug out from under her at the last minute? Or was it a genuine offer, one that would change her life for the better, as she had always hoped? She didn't know who she could trust anymore, not even the companies that had seemed like the dream job. Her entire world had become a tangled web of half-truths, hidden motives, and veiled threats. And then there was the unsettling thought that kept circling her mind: the person in the photograph, the shadowy figure, the one who had been watching her. If they were involved, if they were orchestrating this entire mess, it meant that everything she had believed about the fair, the job offers, even the relationships she had with people like Kate, was a lie. Everything was connected, but she couldn't see how. At that moment, Emily realized just how deep this rabbit hole went. She was no longer dealing with a simple job search. She was in the middle of something far more dangerous and far more complicated. And the stakes were higher than she had ever imagined. As she tried to absorb the magnitude of what was happening, she had to make a choice: continue down this dangerous path to uncover the truth, or walk away and risk never knowing the full story. But every step she took forward seemed to lead to more questions, more danger, and more uncertainty. With her family now dragged into the chaos, Emily was no longer just fighting for her career, she was fighting for her life. The answer was closer than ever, but the cost of finding it might be far greater than she was willing to pay. The twists kept coming, and with every turn, Emily found herself sinking deeper into a mystery that seemed to have no end. Who was behind all of this? And why? The clues were there, but they were leading her into a web of deception where nothing, absolutely nothing, was as it seemed. Keep watching, because the next part of this story will take you somewhere you never expected. You won't want to miss what happens next. As Emily sat in her apartment, clutching the job offer letter, a growing sense of dread settled in her chest. She tried to shake it off, tried to convince herself that this was her big break, the opportunity she had worked so hard for. But the gnawing unease wouldn't let up. It was as if the shadows in her life had grown longer, darker, and more menacing with each passing hour. Every decision, every new clue, seemed to push her further into a labyrinth where the walls were closing in, and there was no way out. Just when she thought she could breathe, when she thought she could finally step forward into the light of what she had worked for, something happened that shattered any illusion of safety she might have had left. It started with the sound. She'd been sitting at her desk, rereading the letter, trying to piece together what it meant. She thought she heard a tap at her window, soft but deliberate. At first, she dismissed it, thinking it was just the wind or maybe her imagination running wild. But then the tap came again, louder, more urgent this time. Her heart rate spiked as she slowly turned her head toward the window. The blinds were drawn shut, the apartment dark except for the dim glow of her desk lamp. But something felt off. She stood up and walked toward the window, her legs stiff with tension. Every step seemed to echo in the silence around her. As she reached the window, she hesitated. The tapping stopped, and for a split second, the world outside her apartment felt eerily still. She drew the blinds open just a crack and peeked through. What she saw made her blood run cold. There, across the street, standing in the shadows of the trees, was a figure. A man. He was wearing a dark coat, his features obscured by the dim lighting, but Emily could tell he was watching her. Staring directly at her apartment. The hairs on the back of her neck stood up as she quickly shut the blinds, her pulse racing. She backed away from the window, her thoughts scrambling, her mind unable to process what she had just seen. Was it just a coincidence? Was she being paranoid? But deep down, she knew it wasn't. Someone was watching her. Someone who had been there, standing just outside her window, waiting. She felt the walls of her apartment suddenly closing in, and the suffocating feeling of being trapped pressed against her chest. She rushed to her phone, her fingers shaking as she dialed Aaron's number, hoping he would pick up. After several rings, the voicemail kicked in. "Hey, it's Aaron. Leave a message." Emily's throat tightened, and for a moment, she almost hung up. She had no idea what to say. Would he believe her? Would he understand the danger she was in? "Aaron, something's wrong. I think I'm being followed. Please, I need you to call me back, okay? Just please call me. I can't explain it, but I don't feel safe." She ended the call, but the anxiety didn't subside. Her hands trembled as she looked around her apartment, every creak of the floorboards, every flicker of light, sending her heart into a frenzy. She couldn't shake the feeling that the figure outside wasn't the only one watching her. What had started as a series of strange events had now become something far darker, something far more personal. The next morning, the tension hadn't lifted. Emily's thoughts were clouded with the images of the figure outside her window, and the constant fear that someone, somewhere, was watching her every move. She couldn't go anywhere without glancing over her shoulder, without wondering if someone was lurking just out of sight. She had become hyper-aware, suspicious of everyone and everything around her. That morning, she tried to meet up with Kate, hoping that a conversation with her old friend might offer some clarity, some sense of normalcy in the madness. But when she arrived at their usual cafe, she saw something that stopped her cold. Kate wasn't sitting at the table, waiting as she usually did. Instead, there was a message, scrawled in what appeared to be black marker on the napkin at the table where they'd always met. The message was simple: "Stay away." Emily felt her stomach drop, the words hitting her like a punch to the gut. Stay away. What did that mean? Why was Kate involved in this? Was she sending a warning, or was she part of the game all along? She looked around, hoping to spot Kate, but there was no sign of her. The cafe was packed, filled with the hum of conversation, but Emily couldn't focus on anything except that note. Her thoughts raced. Had Kate known more than she'd let on? Had she been part of the strange happenings at the job fair? Was she now warning Emily to back off? Or was it something more sinister, a sign that the danger was much closer than she had ever feared? Just as Emily was about to leave the cafe, her phone buzzed. It was a text message from an unknown number. She opened it, her fingers trembling as she read the words, "You're making things worse. Stop asking questions." Her blood ran cold as she realized that the same message had been sent to her before. But this time, the threat felt more real, more imminent. It was no longer just vague warnings or strange disappearances. Someone wanted her to stop, to leave this all behind, and they were willing to do whatever it took to make that happen. Emily didn't know who to trust anymore. The people she had once turned to for support, the recruiters at the job fair, Kate, even Aaron, were all connected in ways she didn't understand. She had always believed that the job fair was her chance to move forward, to step into a new chapter of her life, but now, it felt like the fair had been a trap all along. Every lead, every clue, every person she spoke to seemed to only deepen the mystery, pulling her further into a web of lies and manipulation that she wasn't prepared for. Her heart pounded as she stood on the crowded streets, her mind racing with thoughts of the figure outside her window, the ominous note at the cafe, and the cryptic messages that had been sent to her. Who was behind all of this? Why were they trying to stop her? And what did they want from her? She could feel the pressure mounting, the weight of the unknown crushing down on her, and the fear began to creep in. Was she in real danger? Was someone about to make their move? As she walked through the city, every glance, every shadow felt like a potential threat. She turned a corner, and for a brief moment, thought she saw the same dark figure from outside her apartment just a few steps ahead of her. Her heart skipped a beat, and she quickened her pace, trying to ignore the rising panic in her chest. You should have stopped long ago. The voice was familiar. Too familiar. It was Aaron. With that realization, everything Emily thought she knew crumbled. Her brother, the one person she thought she could rely on, was involved in this mess too. She had been right all along. This wasn't just about a job. This wasn't about her career. This was something far darker, something far more dangerous. The people she had trusted, the ones who had been closest to her, were now part of a game she didn't understand. The stakes were higher than she could have ever imagined. Emily's world was unraveling, and the truth was just out of reach. But with each passing moment, the mystery grew darker, and the danger seemed to close in on her from all sides. Every step she took toward the truth only seemed to lead her deeper into a nightmare she couldn't escape. Who could she trust? Who was behind this? And more importantly, who would be left standing when it was all over? Keep watching, because the answers you've been waiting for are coming. But they might be more than you're ready to handle. Just when Emily thought the darkness had completely enveloped her, something happened that forced her to reconsider everything she believed about the past few weeks. The feeling of being watched, the mysterious threats, the unsettling messages, it had all felt like a twisted, elaborate game, a sinister plot she couldn't unravel no matter how hard she tried. But what if she was wrong? What if she had been looking at the whole situation through the wrong lens from the start? What if everything she thought she knew about the job fair, the recruiters, even the mysterious figure who had been following her, none of it was real in the way she had imagined? It all started with a phone call. It wasn't from Aaron, her brother, who had been haunting her thoughts. It wasn't from Kate, who had gone silent ever since that disturbing note at the cafe. This call came from an unknown number, one she hadn't seen before. The voice on the other end was low, almost unrecognizable, but there was something eerily familiar about it. Emily, the voice said, its tone cold and calculating. I need you to listen very carefully. Everything you've been told, everything you think you know, it's all a lie. The job offers, the recruiters, the danger, it's all part of something much bigger than you've imagined. Emily's heart skipped a beat, her mind scrambling to process the gravity of the message. The voice went on, its words chilling her to the bone. You've been played, Emily. You're not the target, not really. You've been a pawn in a much larger game, a game you've been running toward without even realizing it. You don't understand the truth, but you will. You will, and when you do, you'll wish you hadn't. Her stomach twisted in knots. A pawn. In a game. She had been so certain that she was the one being manipulated, the one targeted, that the thought of being part of something larger, something orchestrated by forces she didn't even know existed, seemed impossible. How could she be the pawn in a game she had no idea she was even playing? She opened her mouth to speak, but the voice cut her off. Don't bother asking questions, it said. You won't get the answers you want. But listen carefully, you need to find Kate. She knows more than you think. She always has. The call ended abruptly, leaving Emily staring at her phone, completely paralyzed. Kate. Of course, it all came back to her. Kate had been there at the job fair, but she had been distant, acting strangely cold. Kate had given her the initial push to attend, had encouraged her to go for the position that seemed so perfect. But since then, She had become unreachable, almost as if she were avoiding Emily. Could Kate have known all along? Was she part of this larger conspiracy? Or was she simply another pawn, another player in this twisted game that was quickly spiraling out of control? With no time to waste, Emily decided she had to find Kate. But the question was, where was she? The cafe, where they had once shared so many conversations, now felt like a memory, something distant, something tainted. She tried calling, but Kate's phone went straight to voicemail. No response. Frustration clawed at Emily's insides, but she couldn't stop now. She needed answers, and the only person who could give them to her was the one person she had been avoiding in the back of her mind. Emily had no choice but to go back to Kate's apartment. It felt like a dangerous gamble, but she couldn't shake the feeling that Kate held the key to everything, to understanding why this had all happened. But as she stood in front of Kate's building, she felt the weight of the situation press down harder than ever. The streets felt empty, the air cold, and the normal hum of the city seemed distant, like a backdrop to something far more sinister. She pushed the door open and made her way up the stairs, each step heavier than the last. When she reached Kate's apartment door, she hesitated for a moment, the enormity of what she was about to do hitting her all at once. She knocked, then waited. The minutes stretched on, each one making her more anxious. But no answer came. Emily's heart pounded as she reached for the handle, only to find the door slightly ajar. She pushed it open carefully, stepping inside. The apartment was eerily quiet, nothing out of the ordinary. At least, nothing at first glance. But then, Emily noticed something that made her freeze in her tracks. A picture, framed on the wall, caught her eye. It was of her and Kate, taken years ago, back when they were both starting out in their careers. They had been so close, like sisters. But in the photo, there was something off. The way Kate was positioned in the picture, her eyes, her posture, it was almost as if she were looking at someone else. Someone beyond Emily, someone hidden in the shadows. She stepped closer to the photo, her fingers trembling as she touched the frame. And that's when she saw it. On the back of the photo, scribbled in pen, was a single word, no. Emily's breath caught in her throat. No. No what? No to what? Before she could process the meaning, a voice rang out behind her, breaking the silence of the room. You should have stayed away, Emily. She spun around, heart racing, to see Kate standing in the doorway. She looked different somehow, tired, her face pale, her eyes empty. Kate wasn't the same person she had been just days ago. Her presence was heavy, almost suffocating, and Emily could feel the gravity of the moment. Her mouth went dry as she tried to speak, but Kate silenced her with a single gesture, a raised hand. You don't understand yet, do you? Kate's voice was low, almost hollow. I never wanted you involved in this, Emily. I never wanted you to know the truth. But it's too late now. You're already in it, and there's no way out. Emily took a step back, her pulse hammering in her ears. In what? What truth, Kate? What is going on here? Kate's eyes flickered, a brief flash of something dark crossing her face before she quickly masked it with a forced smile. It's too dangerous for you to know, she said softly, almost pityingly. You were never meant to uncover this. But you've dug too deep. And now, they're coming for both of us. Suddenly, everything Emily thought she knew about the situation, about the job fair, the job offers, the recruiters, crumbled. It wasn't about a job. It wasn't about her career. It had never been about that. This was about something far bigger, something that neither she nor Kate had been prepared for. The lies, the secrets, the strange behavior, it was all connected, and Emily had unknowingly become a part of it. Kate's warning was clear, they were being hunted. And the more Emily thought about it, the more she realized that the danger she faced wasn't just some random occurrence. It was a calculated move, one that had been set in motion long before she ever stepped foot in that job fair. The chilling truth was becoming clearer, but the cost of knowing it had just escalated beyond anything Emily could have ever imagined. And as Kate turned to walk away, leaving Emily standing in the middle of the apartment, she realized the worst part. The people behind this were closer than she thought. And they had been watching her all along. The truth was out there, but it wasn't something she was ready to face. And now, it was too late to turn back. Emily stood in the middle of Kate's apartment, the weight of the situation bearing down on her chest with an intensity she couldn't shake. Every part of her wanted to flee, to run away from the tangled web of lies and manipulation that had consumed her life in recent weeks. But there was no escaping this. There was no way to unsee what she had just discovered. Her hands trembled, not from the cold, but from the overwhelming realization that everything she had believed in, everything she thought was true, was shattered. The truth wasn't just elusive, it was dangerous. And in that moment, the one thing that became painfully clear to her was that there was no way forward without making a choice. An impossible choice that could cost her everything. Kate stood by the door, her face expressionless, as though she had already resigned herself to the fact that Emily wasn't going to walk away quietly. Her eyes, those eyes that had once been filled with the warmth of a trusted friend, were now empty, almost cold, as if they were hiding a part of her Emily had never known. "You don't have the luxury of innocence anymore, Emily," Kate said, her voice distant, devoid of any real emotion. "You think you can keep digging and uncovering things, but you don't understand how deep this goes. The people involved, they won't stop. They'll come for you, for both of us. And they'll make sure we both disappear if they have to. So, you need to decide. Do you want to live in ignorance, or do you want to know the truth?" The words hit Emily like a punch to the gut. The truth. That word had been hanging in the air for days now, every time Emily found another clue, another breadcrumb leading her deeper into this nightmare. But now, the truth felt more like a curse than a revelation. She had spent the last few weeks questioning everything, trying to connect the dots, trying to find something that made sense of the chaos around her. But every lead only seemed to lead her further into a dark abyss. She had thought that uncovering the truth was her path to freedom, but now she realized that the truth could very well be the thing that destroyed her. The silence between them stretched on, heavy with the weight of everything that had been left unsaid. Emily opened her mouth to speak, to demand answers, to tell Kate that she couldn't walk away now. But before she could say a word, Kate cut her off again. "There's no going back, Emily. I'm not going to lie to you anymore. There's a choice here. You can walk away from this, from all of it. You can pretend like you've never seen anything, like you don't know what's really going on. Or, you can push forward, but if you do, they'll come after you. They'll come after everyone you love. Your friends, your family. Aaron." Kate's voice faltered slightly at the mention of Emily's brother, but it was enough to send a cold chill down her spine. Emily froze. "Aaron," she whispered, the word escaping her before she could stop it. "You have to understand," Kate said, stepping closer, her eyes locking with Emily's. "Aaron has been working with them all along. He's been feeding them information. He's part of this. The only reason he hasn't been directly involved in all of this mess is because he's been protecting you, keeping you out of the worst of it. But don't fool yourself, he's not a hero. He's not someone who's going to come to your rescue. He's been a part of the plan from the start." The revelation hit Emily like a wave crashing against a rock. Aaron, her brother, the person she had trusted the most in the world, was involved in all of this. Her mind refused to process it. It didn't make sense. Aaron had always been there for her, always looked out for her. He had protected her from so much in their lives. How could he possibly be part of this dark conspiracy that had slowly consumed her? But Kate's eyes were unwavering, and Emily could see the truth in them, as painful as it was to accept. The doubt in her chest began to grow, twisting into a knot of fear and confusion. Had she been so blind to the truth all along? Had Aaron been using her, manipulating her in ways she couldn't even begin to comprehend? The person she had leaned on most in her life was now the one who had potentially pulled her into this nightmare. "Why didn't you tell me?" Emily demanded, her voice shaking, her breath coming in ragged gasps. "Why didn't you warn me?" Kate let out a sigh, her eyes softening for a moment. "I tried, Emily. I tried to keep you out of it. But you kept pushing, kept digging deeper. You didn't want to listen. And now, here we are." She paused for a long moment before speaking again, her voice low and steady. "You have to make a choice. If you keep digging, if you keep asking questions, you're not just risking your life, you're risking the lives of everyone around you. And the people who have been pulling the strings won't hesitate to make you disappear, just like they've made everyone else disappear. The words hung in the air like a weight Emily couldn't escape. She could feel the pressure building in her chest as everything around her spiraled out of control. Her mind raced. The people behind this, the ones who had manipulated her from the very start, who were they? What was the endgame? What had they been using Aaron for? And what was she supposed to do now? Kate's face grew harder, more determined. You have to decide what you're willing to lose. Because if you keep going, you'll lose more than you can handle. So tell me, Emily, is it worth it? Is the truth worth your safety? Is it worth the people you care about? You can't have both. The tension between them was suffocating. Emily felt the walls closing in, the weight of the decision crashing down on her shoulders. She was stuck in the middle of a web, with no clear way out. Every part of her wanted to believe that there was a way to fix this, a way to get the truth without destroying everything in the process. But Kate's words echoed in her mind, and deep down, she knew that wasn't true. The truth had a price. And Emily had to decide if she was willing to pay it. Her heart was pounding, and she felt the cold sweat on her brow as she tried to steady her breathing. I don't know what to do, she whispered, the words more to herself than to Kate. I don't know who to trust anymore. Kate's expression softened for just a moment, but then she stepped back, her voice hardening. You'll figure it out. But remember, there's no turning back once you make that choice. And with that, Kate turned and walked away, leaving Emily alone in the apartment. The weight of the impossible decision pressing down on her chest, suffocating her. Every part of her screamed to run, to hide, to forget everything she had uncovered. But she knew she couldn't. Not anymore. The stakes were too high, and the truth, no matter how dangerous, was the only thing that could set her free. But the question remained, was she willing to lose everything to find it? Emily's mind was still reeling from the bombshell Kate had dropped on her. Her brother, Aaron, was part of this conspiracy. But what did that even mean? What was his role? It was too much to process, too much to absorb in one go. She had always trusted Aaron, but now that trust felt like a fragile thing, shattered in an instant. She couldn't shake the feeling that everything she had worked for, everything she had been striving to achieve, was built on a foundation of lies, deception, and manipulation. But there was no time to mourn the betrayal, no time to process the unraveling of her life. Because the stakes had just gone up, and they had gone up in a way that made her realize how far-reaching this entire thing truly was. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, and her heart skipped a beat. It was a message from Aaron. I need to see you. It's time. Meet me at the usual place. Emily froze. The usual place. That could only mean one thing. The old park near the edge of the city, the place they used to go as kids, where they'd meet to talk without anyone knowing. She hadn't been there in years, but Aaron had a way of bringing her back to those places when things were at their most urgent. Her mind raced. What was he planning? Was this some kind of trap? Was he going to try and explain himself? Or was it all part of the game he had been playing behind her back? She couldn't be sure of anything anymore. All she knew was that this was the moment. The moment that would either confirm her worst fears or expose something even darker than she could have ever imagined. She didn't hesitate. She grabbed her jacket, stepped out of Kate's apartment, and made her way to the park, her pulse hammering in her chest. The air felt heavy, thick with tension, as if the entire city was holding its breath. Every step she took felt like a countdown. She could feel the danger pressing in on all sides, but she couldn't stop now. The truth was out there, somewhere, and she wasn't going to stop until she found it. When she arrived at the park, the place was empty. No one was around. The trees, once full of life, now stood like silent sentinels, their branches swaying in the wind. The benches were old, worn, and the pavement cracked beneath her feet. It felt like a forgotten place, as if it had been left behind, just like everything else in her life. She looked around, her senses on high alert. It was then that she saw him, Aaron, standing by the old swing set. His back was turned, but Emily could see the way his shoulders were tense, the way he was scanning the area, like he was expecting someone to show up. Emily, he said without turning around, his voice strained, as though he'd been waiting for this moment for a long time. You shouldn't have come. She took a step forward, every instinct telling her to be careful. What's going on? Aaron? What the hell is happening? She stopped herself, her emotions bubbling to the surface. You've been lying to me. About everything. Kate, the job fair, the recruiters, the threats. I don't know what any of this means anymore, but she struggled to find the words, to make sense of it all, but it felt like they were slipping through her fingers. Aaron finally turned to face her, his eyes cold, distant, and filled with something that made Emily's heart sink. I never wanted you involved in this, Emily. I never wanted you to see what I've seen, hear what I've heard. I kept you safe, kept you in the dark, because I thought you were better off that way. But it's too late now. He stepped forward, his voice growing quieter, more intense. They're not just after you, Emily. They've been watching us for years. And I've been part of it all along. Emily's breath caught in her throat. She had hoped for an explanation, for some kind of closure, but what she was hearing felt like a betrayal on a scale she couldn't comprehend. What do you mean, part of it? She whispered, barely able to force the words out. What is this? Who are they? Aaron looked around quickly, as if making sure no one was listening. I don't have time to explain everything. But they're everywhere, Emily. They're not just after us, they're watching everyone we know, everyone we care about. They're infiltrating every level of society. The job fair? That was just a front. The recruiters, the offers, they were using that to weed out people, to see who was valuable, who could be trusted. And you, Emily, you were a perfect target. Her heart pounded in her chest as the pieces started to fall into place. The job offers, the way everything had seemed too perfect, too orchestrated, it had all been a setup. But for what? What was the endgame? Who were these people, and why were they targeting her, her family, everyone she loved? Before she could speak, Aaron interrupted her again, his voice urgent, his eyes darting nervously. Listen to me, he said, grabbing her arm. You need to go. You need to leave the city. Leave everything behind. They're coming for us. They've already infiltrated too much. I'm too deep in this now, and I can't help you anymore. If you stay, you're going to get caught in something that's bigger than both of us. They've already marked you, Emily. They're watching you right now. Emily's blood ran cold as the weight of his words settled over her. What do you mean, they're watching me? She looked around wildly, her heart pounding in her throat. Who are they, Aaron? Tell me. But Aaron's face twisted with regret. I can't, he said, his voice shaking. I've made deals, Emily. I've been working with them. I had no choice. And now, I'm stuck. We're both stuck. But you, his eyes grew darker, more desperate. You don't have to be. If you leave now, if you disappear, they'll leave you alone. But if you stay. Suddenly, there was a sound behind them. The crunch of footsteps on gravel. Emily's heart raced. She turned, expecting to see someone she recognized, someone who might help. But what she saw made her blood run cold. A man, dressed in dark clothes, with a hood pulled low over his face, stepped into view. He was tall, built like a shadow, and his presence was as ominous as the silence that followed him. He didn't say a word. He just stood there, watching them both, his gaze cold and unblinking. Aaron stepped in front of Emily, his hand outstretched, as if trying to shield her from the figure. Go, he said, his voice thick with panic. Now. But it was too late. The man didn't need to say a word. He stepped forward, closing the distance between them with terrifying speed. And Emily knew, in that moment, that there was no running from this. No escaping the truth. She had been marked, targeted, and there was only one way out, to face whatever was coming head-on. But was she ready to sacrifice everything, her family, her life, her future, just to uncover a truth that might destroy her? The man's shadow loomed closer, and Emily realized that this wasn't just about her anymore. It wasn't just about her job or her brother or even Kate. This was a war. A war she had been unknowingly pulled into, and the people she had trusted most had been playing a part in it all along. Emily's heart was pounding in her chest as the figure stepped closer, his dark eyes gleaming under the dim streetlight. The weight of everything that had happened, everything that had been revealed, was crashing down on her, and she could hardly breathe. She could feel the presence of danger all around her, like a storm closing in. Aaron stood in front of her, his body tense, his eyes darting between her and the mysterious man who had emerged from the shadows. But the man didn't move. He didn't speak. He only watched them, his expression unreadable, almost like he was waiting for something. Emily's mind raced. This was it. The moment that would finally bring everything to the surface. She had no choice but to face whatever this was, whatever it meant. All the pieces were there now, the job fair, the recruiters, the lies. It wasn't just about her anymore. It had never been. But what was the true purpose behind all of it? Who were these people, and what did they want? Why had they been manipulating her, her brother, and so many others? The truth, buried in the heart of this twisted web, was so close she could feel it. But the cost of finding it was higher than she had ever imagined. The man stepped forward, his gaze never leaving her. "You're more dangerous than you realize," he finally said, his voice low and gravelly. "You don't understand the magnitude of what you've uncovered, do you? You think this is just about a few offers, a few jobs. This is bigger. Much bigger. This is about control. Power. And you've just stumbled into it." Emily swallowed hard, her hands trembling as she took a step back. She wanted to ask him everything, to demand the answers she had been searching for, to finally make sense of the chaos. But she couldn't. Her body was frozen, paralyzed by fear, by the overwhelming sense that if she spoke the wrong words, she wouldn't make it out of this alive. Aaron moved, stepping between her and the man. "You need to stop," he said, his voice trembling, barely audible. "I can't let you do this. You don't understand, she doesn't know what she's up against. She's just..." "Shut up, Aaron." The man's voice was sharp, cutting through the tension like a knife. "She already knows more than she should. And now she's a threat." Emily's pulse raced. A threat? To whom? What were they really after? "Everything you've been doing, Aaron," the man continued, "was to protect your sister. That's the only reason you're still standing here. But that's over now. You've been given your chances. You've played your part." He looked at Emily, his expression darkening. "Now, it's her turn." Emily's eyes widened. "What do you mean, my turn?" she asked, her voice trembling. But the man's words were like a punch to the gut. "You've been chosen, Emily," he said, stepping closer, his voice lowering to a menacing whisper. "You're the final piece of the puzzle. You're the one who's going to complete it all." She felt the blood drain from her face. No, I'm not. I didn't." She stopped, her breath catching in her throat. The pieces clicked together in her mind like a final puzzle. The job offers, the recruiters, everything was about finding the right person for this. "For this." The man nodded, his lips curling into a sinister smile. "Exactly. You were always part of the plan. You just didn't know it." Suddenly, it all became clear, too clear. The job fair hadn't been about employment opportunities. It had been a recruitment process, but not for the reasons she thought. It wasn't just about filling positions. It was about finding individuals who were vulnerable, people with potential, but also people who could be manipulated, used, controlled. They were looking for the right person to bring everything together, the final piece of a much darker agenda. And Emily had been the perfect candidate. Her heart pounded in her ears as she processed the magnitude of the truth. The world she thought she knew was nothing more than a carefully constructed illusion. The offers, the threats, the strange coincidences, none of it had been a mistake. She wasn't a victim of circumstance. She had been chosen. But chosen for what? Before she could ask another question, Aaron stepped forward, his eyes filled with guilt. "Emily, listen to me," he said, his voice cracking. "You don't have to be part of this. You don't have to play their game. We can still..." "You've already played your part, Aaron," the man interrupted, his tone cold and final. "There's no turning back now." He reached into his coat and pulled out a small device, one that glinted in the dim light, its purpose unclear. "This is where the game ends." Everything happened in a blur. The man pressed a button on the device, and suddenly, the world seemed to freeze. Emily's heart raced as the air around her grew thick with tension, as if something was about to happen, something huge, something irreversible. She looked at Aaron, whose eyes were filled with regret. And then, before she could even think, there was a sharp, deafening noise, a burst of static that overwhelmed her senses, and she felt something cold wrap around her mind, like a pressure squeezing the life out of her. But then, in that split second of confusion, something unexpected happened. Aaron lunged at the man, his body moving faster than Emily had ever seen. The two figures collided, and in the chaos, the device slipped from the man's hand. Emily's eyes locked onto it. It was a small, unassuming thing, but the way it glowed ominously told her everything she needed to know. This wasn't just some ordinary device. It was the key to something far darker. Without thinking, she grabbed it. In that moment, everything shifted. The pressure around her mind lifted, and the realization hit her like a freight train. The conspiracy was bigger than anyone could have ever imagined. This wasn't just about her, or even Aaron, it was about control on a global scale. This was bigger than the city, bigger than the government, bigger than anything she had ever thought possible. It was about controlling people's lives, manipulating them into positions of power, turning them into puppets who would dance to the strings pulled by those in the shadows. The man, now grappling with Aaron on the ground, looked up at Emily with a sneer. "You think you can stop this? You think you can control what's already been set in motion?" Emily held the device tightly in her hands, her pulse racing. For the first time in this nightmare, she felt something else, something she hadn't felt before: power. It was a fleeting sensation, but it was there. And with it, the final twist of the game played out. As the man reached for the device, desperate to reclaim it, Emily slammed it into the ground, breaking it open, revealing what was hidden inside. The world seemed to spin, the ground beneath her feet trembling. The device wasn't just a tool, it was a signal. A signal to something far larger than anything they had anticipated. As the signal triggered, the lights in the park flickered, and then, the dark figures that had been lurking in the shadows for so long finally emerged from the darkness, revealing themselves to be much closer than anyone could have imagined. And then, Emily realized with sickening clarity, the true enemy wasn't just the man or the people who had been pulling the strings from the beginning. It was the system itself. The system that had been using them all along. And as the figures approached, she knew there was no going back. The battle was just beginning, and this was only the first move. The mystery had only just begun to unravel. And the consequences? Well, they would haunt her and everyone she loved for the rest of their lives. The weeks following that night were a blur. Emily found herself walking through a world that had once felt so familiar, now tainted by the shadow of everything she had uncovered. She had never imagined it could get this far, never imagined that the people she trusted most, the people she loved, could be tied to something so dangerous, so deceptive. But she had survived. The chaos, the manipulation, the threats, she had made it through. But the scars would never fade, not completely. She wasn't the same person who had walked into that park that night, who had believed in the safety of her world. Now, she understood that safety was an illusion. Trust was fragile. And the truth? It was more dangerous than she could have ever imagined. The day after the confrontation in the park, Emily had gone straight to the authorities. With the device in her possession and Aaron's confession, she knew she had to take action. It wasn't just about her anymore. It was about stopping the system that had been pulling the strings behind the scenes. It wasn't easy. There were those who didn't want to listen, those who tried to bury the truth, but Emily didn't stop. She fought with everything she had, driven by the knowledge that she couldn't let this happen to anyone else. Aaron had paid a heavy price for his involvement, but in the end, his betrayal became her strength. She used it to expose the conspiracy for what it was: a system of control, hidden in plain sight, operating beneath the surface of the world she thought she knew. But even as the conspiracy was dismantled, even as the key players were arrested, something lingered in the back of Emily's mind. The device, the one she had broken open, was only the beginning. She had uncovered something much larger than she ever could have imagined. The figures that had emerged from the shadows in that park were only a small part of a network that spanned continents. The pieces were falling into place, but the full picture remained unclear. And as much as she wanted to believe that everything was over, that she had won, a nagging feeling in her gut told her it wasn't. Not yet. Emily had to come to terms with the fact that she might never have all the answers. The conspiracy she had uncovered was only the tip of the iceberg. There were still too many unknowns, too many questions that remained unanswered. But as she sat in the quiet of her apartment, staring at the empty space where so much of her old life used to be, she realized something. This wasn't about the answers anymore. It was about the journey, the fight to reclaim her life, her future. She had stood up against a system that sought to control her, and she had come out on the other side stronger. It wasn't the victory she had imagined, but it was hers nonetheless. Then, one day, as Emily was preparing to leave for work, she received a message. The words were simple, but they stopped her cold. "It's not over. We're watching." Her fingers tightened around the phone, a chill running down her spine. It was the same anonymous message she had received weeks ago. The same cryptic words that had set everything in motion. A part of her wanted to delete it, to move on, to believe that the nightmare was over. But she couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to come. That the fight wasn't finished. The conspiracy had been exposed, but the forces behind it were still out there, waiting for their moment to strike again. And then, just as quickly as the feeling came, she realized something that sent a shiver down her spine. It wasn't just the conspiracy that haunted her, it was the system itself. The people, the ones who had been pulling the strings, they were still out there. Watching. Waiting. And no matter how much she had uncovered, no matter how much she had fought, they would always be one step ahead. Emily's phone buzzed again, but this time, it was a call. The number was unfamiliar, but she picked up anyway. "Hello," she said, her voice steady, though she could feel her heart hammering in her chest. "Emily," the voice on the other end said, low and urgent. "You don't know me, but I know you. We need to talk. You're not done yet." Before she could respond, the call ended, leaving her staring at the screen. The words lingered in the air like a warning, a promise, a threat. She knew it wasn't over. And in that moment, she understood that this story, her story, was far from finished. It was just beginning. The world outside her window looked the same as it always had, familiar, safe, and deceptively quiet. But Emily knew the truth now. The truth that nothing was ever really as it seemed, that every shadow hid a secret, and that there were always more layers to peel back. The conspiracy had been big, but this was bigger. And as she looked out over the city, Emily realized that she wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She was fighting for everyone who had been manipulated, controlled, used. And as much as she hated the idea of going back into the shadows, of facing whatever came next, she knew one thing for sure: she wouldn't back down. Not now. Not ever. Her journey was far from over, and the truth would continue to haunt her. But in the end, she would keep fighting, keep seeking the answers, no matter how much it cost her. Because sometimes, the hardest battles aren't the ones you fight alone. They're the ones that change everything and everyone around you. And Emily was ready to face whatever came next. Even if the mystery had only just begun. And that, perhaps, was the most unsettling truth of all.